In today's video, I want to answer the question, how many sons did Jesse have? Did Jesse have 7 sons or did he have 8 sons? And this is the kind of question that comes up in regards to Bible contradictions. So as a Christian, it's really important that you understand how to kind of engage and answer a question like this. Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Israel, and what we do here is we help you avoid deception while mastering the Bible. If you like the sounds of this, make sure you definitely subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to show your support. Now, like I said a moment ago, this is very significant because many people find out about something like this when someone's coming along and posing to them, why does the Bible say this in one place, but in another place it says something completely different? This is a contradiction. And just for the record, I wasn't in that particular scenario like I just mentioned. No one came along to me one day and said, look, you know what? The Bible contradicts itself in these 2 places. It wasn't like that for me. What ultimately happened was I was watching some Bible teaching one day from the late Chuck Missler. And just in passing, based on whatever he was teaching about at the time, he basically mentioned this particular scenario. So just for the record, you're not always going to be in a situation where someone's teaching you this and it's not coming from someone who's trying to damage your faith. So let's look at the 2 passages in question. So if you haven't been presented with this particular question before, you know exactly how to deal with it, but maybe you have been posed with this particular scenario before, and this is why you're ultimately watching this video. So this is 1 Samuel, as you can see here, and this is the first passage of significance. You can see it says, again, Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel, and Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord have not chosen these. Now, I'm just showing you this because it's highlighting first and foremost that there were 7 sons. But then as you can see here, it talks about how there was 1 son that remains. So just by mere addition, you have 7 sons and then you have an additional son. That's 8 sons, right? Nothing tricky here. Now, moving on, a few lines later in 1 Samuel, it's even spelled out for you and for us even more categorically. Because look what it says. It says, now David, that's King David, for those of you who don't know, the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name Jesse, right? And it says he had 8 sons. So we've seen quite clearly in 1 Samuel, just by looking at 2 quick references, the Bible outlines that there were 8 sons of Jesse. Also, another thing which I'll highlight as well is it mentions obviously David by name, and it also mentions 3 of David's older brothers in that particular passage as well. So now we get to 1 Chronicles, and what do we see? It says Jesse, right? And it begins to break down all of his sons ultimately, and it goes through all of their sons by name, and it says right here, David the 7th. So the point that's ultimately made is 1 Samuel said David was one of 8 sons. 1 Chronicles says David is the 7th son. How do we reconcile these particular 2 passages without it being a contradiction? Now, a big mistake many of us make today when it comes to reading the Bible is because we forget to think about the fact that we're reading many of these things 2,000 plus years after the fact. So it's easy for us to kind of mesh the 2 and ultimately think they're exactly the same, when that's not actually the case. So why does 1 Chronicles say 7 sons, but 1 Samuel clearly talks about 8 sons? Now, there's a couple of things I want to suggest in today's video to answer and give you things to basically consider. And some of these are more than plausible as to why this is actually the case. But one thing I want you to highlight first and foremost is, and I always say this over and over again, I always want people that come to the Bible to think about these things critically. So what do we see in 1 Chronicles which we do not see in 1 Samuel? I kind of alluded to this earlier on, right? You get all of the names of the sons in this particular passage. That was different to what we read about in 1 Samuel. We only read about the first 3 sons of Jesse and ultimately David as well. Now we're getting all of the specific names about these particular individuals. Also, as you can see down here, I'll put another arrow, we see that the daughters ultimately, or at least 2 daughters anyway, are mentioned here specifically by name. These particular daughters were not mentioned in the same placement in 1 Samuel with the categorization of the 8 sons. That's another thing which you need to consider. So what you need to consider first and foremost is, don't make the mistake of reading back into the text that 1 Samuel and 1 Chronicles were written at the same time. We believe obviously as Christians that 1 Samuel was written first, and then at some point later 1 Chronicles was ultimately written. So that really, when you think about it and you understand that there's a time gap, really opens up understanding in regards to how this can actually be true in both instances, but not necessarily be a contradiction. Now, one thing I'll just kind of throw out there, right, which is not necessarily something I'll bank any really serious amount of money on, but you could just consider first and foremost that perhaps David was the name of David himself, but also his immediate older brother. That's not the most far-fetched thing to do, and it would just imply that in First Chronicles it's detailing the 7 sons first and foremost, and leaving out David, considering we would know who David was as the youngest son based on First Samuel. It's something for you to consider, but like I said, it's not something that I would basically bank on. But considering a moment ago we talked about time passing between First Samuel and First Chronicles being written, what is most likely and more probable is that David's immediate older brother, the 7th, was ultimately either extremely wicked and blotted out from the genealogy, or maybe David's brother died and did not do anything notable in his life in regards to being jotted down. These are 2 very probable examples of what most likely happened to David's older brother. Why? Because we see, for example, like in the New Testament, in Matthew's gospel account, he's giving us a genealogy, a family tree, and he specifically misses out a couple of names, and these were some of the most wicked people in the family line. So if it's David's brother, for example, did something extremely wicked, it wouldn't be the most far-fetched thing or something isolated in the Bible where someone's name was ultimately blotted out from a family tree. But even still, let's say, for example, he didn't do anything wicked or he didn't do anything of note. He most likely probably died between David being anointed in 1 Samuel and this particular documentation of history in 1 Chronicles. This is how in 1 Samuel David could be the 8th son, but by the time Chronicles is written, David's brother ultimately had died based on history, and the person's ultimately writing this stuff down, highlighting how something happened to David's older brother. So although it may seem to some, and some may present this confidently that, you know what, this is some extreme contradiction, really when you just think about this, there are multiple things we can look at which can ascertain why they can both be true even though they are actually different.